What is rigid axle suspension and how does it work? The rigid axle suspension in a car is a type of suspension system used in the rear of some vehicles. Unlike independent suspension, where each wheel can move independently, rigid axle suspension connects the two rear wheels via a solid axle. The rigid axle suspension in a car is a system that connects the rear wheels via a solid axle and uses springs and shock absorbers to absorb impacts and maintain the stability of the vehicle. Although it does not offer the same comfort and performance on rough terrain as an independent suspension, it is robust and suitable for heavy-duty and off-road applications. The main purpose of rigid axle suspension is to provide stability and load capacity, especially in utility vehicles and off-road vehicles. Although it may not offer the same level of comfort and performance on rough terrain as an independent suspension, the rigid axle suspension is robust and easy to maintain, making it popular in heavy-duty and off-road applications. There are different components that are part of the rigid axle suspension system. The axle itself is a strong metal tube that extends from the center of the vehicle to the rear wheels, connecting the latter. At each end of the axle are the rear wheels, which are mounted on suspension arms that allow vertical movement. To absorb road irregularities, springs are used to support the weight of the vehicle and shock absorbers to control rebound. In rigid axle suspension, these springs and shock absorbers are usually located outside the axle, mounted on the suspension arms or on the vehicle's chassis. When the vehicle goes over a bump or uneven surface, the rigid axle moves up and down. Springs and shock absorbers absorb impact and reduce the amount of motion transmitted to the vehicle's chassis. This helps maintain the stability of the car and provides better handling in different road conditions. Although rigid axle suspension is effective in terms of load capacity and durability, it may have some disadvantages. By connecting the two rear wheels via a solid axle, the independent movement of each wheel is limited. This can result in less traction and less comfort when driving on rough terrain or in tight turns. In addition to its use in utility and off-road vehicles, live axle suspension is also found in some racing and competition vehicles, due to its ability to withstand high loads and provide stability in extreme situations. An important aspect of the rigid axle suspension is the control of lateral roll. When the vehicle leans to one side in a curve, the rigid axle tends to transfer more weight to that wheel, which can affect the stability and grip of the wheels. To counteract this, stabilizer bars, also known as torsion bars, are used, which connect to the chassis and axle to minimize sway. In terms of maintenance, rigid axle suspension is generally easier to maintain and repair compared to independent suspension as it has fewer moving components and complex connections. However, it may require regular adjustment of the springs and shock absorbers to maintain optimal performance. In conclusion, rigid axle suspension in a car is a system that connects the rear wheels via a solid axle and uses springs and shock absorbers to absorb impacts and maintain the stability of the vehicle. Although it offers greater load capacity and durability, it can limit independent wheel movement and may not provide the same level of comfort and performance on rough terrain as independent suspension. It is a popular choice on utility vehicles, off-road vehicles and some racing vehicles due to its robustness and load capacity.